Tenant assignment is one of those things that feels easy until you onboard the first 100 customers and suddenly everything depends on tenant E not leaking into tenant B. Today we will speak about the tenant modeling, scalable assignment rules, and also where AI fits without breaking any compliance. Let's start with a simple but scalable tenant hierarchy. This structure implies three important design decisions. For the first, tenants are top-level isolation units. Secondly, roles live inside of the tenants. And the last thing is the users are contextual, not global. This means no requests are valid without any tenant context. What does it mean? That the users, when there are some requests for one of the users, the answer should imply already which tenant this user belongs to. Exactly this is one of the important design decisions. Each request should provide the information to which tenant the user belongs to. Here, let us switch to the next relevant topic. Some of the experts often mix three important concepts: identity, tenants, and roles. Identity provides you the information who you are, for example, the user ID or authentication provider. More information you can see in my previous videos. Tenants finally provides information to which tenant the user belongs to. And the roles finally provide the information what exact is this user allowed to do in this tenant. Should he has only read permissions or also edit permissions as well. This enables multi-tenant access and also help to avoid any exceptions, disasters, or hard-coded permissions as well. The scalable tenant assignment flow looks like this. In the first step, the user arrives via a single sign-on or invitation token or API provision, for example. The next step is the system starts to evaluate the domain, the contract ID, invitation token. And here it's important to have the deterministic rule engine. What exactly happened when the user provides this and this information? If, then, else. You see, there are no guessing, no magic. You have dedicated rules to which role the user should be assigned, and he provides these attributes. And here you might ask yourself, and where's the AI? AI, augmented role assignment, doesn't replace the rule engine. It helps to detect. It suggests. AI can provide the information and cluster the behavior, what the user finally do, as usually, or to identify the behavior of the users exactly this time in this tenant A might be more typical for the tenant B and assigned to the tenant B as well, if it's allowed as well. But here is important point: the AI suggests and the human allow. Let me provide you some practical example. Imagine you have the user X of the tenant A, and as usually this user X has read permissions, but today he requested to edit something. AI agent identify this behavior and suggest and ask the administrator of the tenant E if the user X might be allowed to edit to get the edit permissions for this tenant A. And the administrator can agree or disagree. After some time, if it's happened many times that the administrator agreed that this user X can receive the edit permissions, the AI also clusters this behavior and doesn't ask anymore the administrator if the user should receive. It will, so AI agent will assign automatically to this user the edit permissions until the administrator finally disable this action. AI also helps to answer when the tenant should be split, if the tenant A needs to get some subtenants, or even if the complexity of the role starts to be so large that you need to restrict the design of your role architecture. In overall, AI is able to analyze, to cluster, and to provide the suggestions, but the final step should be done provided by the human. Now we are coming to the end. And to summarize all the insights you learned in this video, you need to have the answers for these 3 questions. Who is the user? For which tenant is this request for? And finally, what is allowed to do this user in this specific tenant? If one of the information is missed, deny by default. Security rule: tenant context must be explicit, validated, and logged. A scalable tenant model is boring by design. Clear rules, clear pattern, clear boundaries, and the AI is just for the suggestions, for concernings, for warnings, and everything must be approved by the human. If your tenant model makes sense for today, it also will make sense for 10 scale. Like, subscribe, and share this video to someone who still mix the users, tenants, and roles in one table.